The Human-Horse Relationship by Jared Taylor. A brief observational study of how human and equines have evolved together over time. Horses have been a part of human culture since as early as the Paleolithic era, when we hunted them for their meat. It is thought that, because we hunted them for their meat, we learned to tame them in the first place. Sometime during the Neolithic age, we as a species started to utilize horses in our daily lives. Even in recent years, horses are still used to provide means of transportation or to aid in labor for various peoples. Whether it be warfare, recreation, sport, horses have been an integral part of human life for the past 12,000 years. In fact, horses have been so integral to humans that today we are using them as therapy animals to help heal or rehabilitate individuals. The earliest equids might have existed during the Eocene, around 65 million years ago. Eohippus, or the dawn horse as it was called, was a parasodactyl that was very primitive and about as small as a fox. It used 4 toes on the front feet with 3 on the back feet. By the Oligocene era, Mesohippus was about as big as a large dog that ran using 3 toe-like appendages instead of a single appendage. However, when Parahippus appeared in the Miocene, that is when we see adaptations for grazing on open plains start to appear in both the feet as well as the teeth. Now, as we move on from early evolution and domestication, we see a more consistent change in breed differences that make up the equine species we see today. Northern breeds are generally heavier built, with deep bodies, short, stocky legs, small ears, large heads, thick coats, and less reactive temperaments, which is probably due to evolving in colder climates, whereas southern breeds are gracile with long, slender legs, fine coats, small heads, large ears, and other physiological adaptations to probably aid in heat dissipation. Archaeological sites in Europe found that around 9,000 years ago the remains of wild horses were very rare, but that around 6,000 years ago the earliest evidence of domestication starts to appear, which helps to establish a timeline that by the first millennia BC the importance of the ridden horse in human culture had been established. The most accepted center of origin for horse domestication is the Central Eurasian steppe, which again was around the 5th millennia BC, which is when we start to see the bones of horses appear in large quantities within the archaeological dig sites. Forensic archaeology that focuses on the bones of these horses show us that not only were we breeding them for specific needs, such as chariots, but we also see them used in specific ways. As we examine specific injuries to the bones in the Iron Age horse skeletons and compare them to similar observations we see in modern horse skeletons, we are able to derive probable uses for them. Using the modern-day Exmoor ponies in a study to compare the injuries sustained to their skeletal structure to those seen in the Iron Age horses, we're able to see a comparison with the Scythian saddles, forming lesions found on the bones as a presumed result of being ridden. Here we see in the Chauvet cave, a horse has been buried almost ceremoniously, which may indicate an emotional connection to the horses themselves. And in Pompeii, we see the remains of a horse that's been excavated, indicating that horses were used in the day-to-day life of the citizens inside the city. In a journal, Society and Animals, Carrie Brandt illustrates in her article, A Language of Their Own, an Interactionist Approach to Human-Horse Communication, that the body is the basis from which a system of communication can grow. She postulates that we can communicate with each other through bodily and nonverbal communication, instead of verbal like we can with dogs or other animals, because of our unique relationship on our shared attribute of being a larger mammal. Although audible cues are evident in horses, such as neighing, whinnying, or even stomping of feet, Brandt goes on to say that both horses and humans can learn a complicated system of body language different from the elements of spoken language, thus enabling each to express a subjective presence to the other and work together in a goal-oriented fashion. Considering the social bonding of horses with each other in their own species, these social aspects make horses much more adept at understanding and communicating with us, and they seem to do so via nonverbal empathic response, using physical cues and body language more so than they do audible. This creates a multidimensional system of shared body language where horses and humans can develop intersubjective understanding of one another. In an open clinical trial performed by Brantley T. Klontz, Klontz describes an experimental equine-assisted therapy approach where horses were used in the physiological treatment of 31 patients. They called this approach the equine-assisted experiential therapy, or EAET. In EAET, horses are used as a sort of catalyst and or metaphor that aids in surfacing hidden or deep-seated issues, with the biggest goal being the ability to resolve any unfinished business that the patient may have in their life. EAET offers a very unique opportunity in using horses as metaphors because horses can spark a myriad of emotions and possibly even behaviors for humans. These elicited emotions can then be used as the aforementioned catalyst, which can aid in personal awareness or growth in the human subjects, even aiding with projection and transference issues. When horses ignore a patient, walk away, exhibit biting, or otherwise act in a negative manner, all these means of communication can help patients learn and grow personally as they interact with the horses. Again, this is through their body language. Horses can also give accurate and unbiased feedback, mirroring both the physical and emotional states of the participants during the exercises, providing clients with an opportunity to raise their awareness and to practice congruence between their feelings and their behaviors. These assumptions were confirmed using the brief system inventory and the personal orientation inventory, or BSI and POI, which are both patient self-reporting tools. The results from both the BSI and POI in Klontz's trial proved that participants showed significant and stable reductions in overall physiological distress and enhancements in physiological well-being from pre-test to post-test and even follow-up. So as we look back over horses and their relationship with us, we see that we're very much intertwined. In the near 12,000 year history of humans interacting with horses, horses have gone from being only a source of meat for consumption to now a companion that can help us overcome physiological distress. Though starting out as something the size of a dog living in a swamp, these now half-ton mammals have become an integral part of human life and through the centuries have helped propel us to even greater achievements. Whether it was pulling a plow or serving as a catalyst for personal growth, the human-horse relationship is one to rival that of the human-canine relationship on every level and may even surpass it someday.